General Hospital will reveal interesting facts on Tuesday, March 11, 2025. First, Portia arrived at Curtis's doorstep with a sense of urgency that she could no longer suppress. Fear clung to her every movement, her usually composed demeanor now fractured by the weight of the truth she had been forced to confront. She knew Curtis was her only hope, perhaps the only person who could understand the gravity of what she was facing. With each hesitant step forward, her mind replayed the events that had led her here, and the terrifying realization that Drew was no longer just an adversary, he was a threat to her life. She barely managed to steady her breath as she sat across from Curtis, her hands clasped tightly together as if holding on to the last remnants of control she had left. The moment she spoke, her voice trembled with a mixture of fear and desperation. She had kept this secret buried for so long, convinced that it would never resurface, but Drew had somehow uncovered the truth. She had once tampered with Heather's medical test results. It had been a desperate decision, one she had justified at the time, but now it was being used against her in the worst way possible. Drew had not confronted her with demands for money or leverage. No, his intentions were far darker. He wanted her gone. He wanted to silence her forever. Portia's heart pounded as she explained the depth of the situation. Drew had already lost everything once, his position at Aurora, his reputation, and the power he had once wielded. And it was all because Curtis and Michael had conspired to push him out, stripping him of his control and forcing him into exile. But Drew was not the type of man to accept defeat. He had bided his time, gathered information, and now, he was ready to strike back with a vengeance that was colder and more calculated than anything they had ever anticipated. He had sworn that Curtis and everyone he cared about would pay the price, and Portia had become his first target. Curtis listened in silence, his expression unreadable, but the tension in his jaw and the way his fingers curled into his palms betrayed his growing anger. He had always known that Drew was dangerous, but he had underestimated just how far he would go to exact his revenge. He had thought that cutting Drew out of Aurora would be the end of the conflict, that the man would move on, find another venture, another opportunity to rebuild. But instead, Drew had turned into something far more dangerous, a man with nothing to lose and a vendetta to fulfill. Portia swallowed hard, her hands tightening into fists as she leaned forward. She had tried to ignore the warning signs at first, the strange messages, the feeling of being watched, the subtle threats that had seemed like paranoia at the time. But now, it was clear that Drew had been toying with her, watching her every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She didn't know what he had planned, but she knew it wasn't just a warning. He wanted to eliminate her, to make sure she could never expose him or fight back. "I don't know what to do, Curtis," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't go to Jordan. If I tell the police, they'll start asking questions about what I did, and that's exactly what Drew wants. He wants me backed into a corner with nowhere to run. And if he comes after me, what if he comes after you next? Or Trina? Or anyone else close to you?" Curtis exhaled sharply, his mind already racing with possibilities. He couldn't let Drew get away with this, but he also couldn't afford to act recklessly. If Drew had managed to dig up Portia's past, there was no telling what other leverage he had. And if they made the wrong move, he could use that information to destroy her before they even had a chance to stop him. "We have to be smart about this," Curtis finally said, his voice firm, though his mind was still processing the severity of the threat. "If Drew is watching you, then that means he's expecting you to panic. He wants you scared. He wants you to make a mistake." Portia's breath hitched, and she nodded, understanding the truth in his words. Drew was a strategist, always had been. This wasn't just about getting rid of her. He wanted to send a message. If he succeeded, it wouldn't just be her life on the line. It would be Curtis, Trina, and anyone else he saw as collateral damage in his war for revenge. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice barely concealing the fear beneath it. Curtis narrowed his eyes, his mind already working through the puzzle. He couldn't let Drew dictate their next move. If they wanted to survive this, they had to turn the tables before he had the chance to strike. It wasn't just about protecting Portia anymore. It was about stopping Drew before he destroyed everything in his path. "We find out exactly what he knows," Curtis said finally. "And then, we take him down before he ever gets the chance to make his move." Second, when Dante and Lulu finally reunite, it signifies more than just a rekindling of their past romance. It represents a profound transformation in both of their lives, a second chance at the love they thought had been lost to time and circumstance. After enduring so much pain, heartbreak, and uncertainty, they find themselves at a crossroads where the past meets the future, and they must decide whether to embrace the love that still lingers between them or allow it to remain a memory. For Dante, the loss of Sam was a devastating blow that left him grappling with grief and a profound sense of emptiness. At first, he struggled to accept that she was truly gone, clinging to the memories of their time together as if they could somehow keep her presence alive. The process of mourning was long and arduous, filled with sleepless nights and moments of unbearable loneliness. But as time passed, he began to understand that he could not live in the shadow of his sorrow forever. Sam had been a significant part of his life, and he would always cherish her memory, but she was gone, and the world around him had continued to move forward. He realized that he needed to do the same, not just for himself but for his son, Rocco, who deserved a father who was present, whole, and capable of providing him with the love and stability he needed. Lulu's return was nothing short of miraculous. Having been trapped in a coma for so long, she awoke to a world that had changed in ways she could never have anticipated. Her body was weak, and her mind struggled to catch up with the time she had lost. But through it all, one thing remained unchanged: her love for Dante. The years apart had not erased the deep connection they shared. If anything, the distance and the obstacles had only solidified what she had always known in her heart. However, re-entering Dante's life was not simple. She had missed so much, and in her absence, he had moved on in ways she had never expected. Knowing that he had built a life with Sam was a painful reality to face, yet she could not deny the emotions that resurfaced whenever she looked at him. It was as if no time had passed at all, as if the love they had once nurtured had been waiting patiently for the right moment to be rekindled. Their journey back to one another was not without challenges. There were wounds that needed to heal, trust that needed to be rebuilt, and fears that had to be confronted. Dante had to navigate the guilt of moving on after Sam's death, questioning whether he was betraying her memory by allowing himself to feel something for Lulu again. Lulu, in turn, had to process the reality of what she had missed, how life had continued without her and how she needed to find her place in it once more. But as they spent more time together, the barriers between them began to fade, replaced by the undeniable pull of familiarity and love. Every shared glance, every unspoken understanding, and every moment of laughter reminded them of the bond they had always shared. The realization became clearer with each passing day: no matter how much had changed, their love had never truly disappeared. The most profound impact of their reunion was on Rocco. Having spent so much of his young life navigating the uncertainty of his parents' separation, he had always held on to the hope that one day they would be a family again. For years, he had watched other children with their two-parent households and wondered why his own family had been fractured. Though he had adjusted to life as it was, deep down, he had never stopped yearning for the day when his mother and father would be together again. When that moment finally arrived, it was as if a missing piece of his world had finally been restored. The joy in his eyes, the lightness in his steps, and the sense of security that settled over him were undeniable. He no longer had to divide his love between two separate homes. He could finally experience the warmth of a unified family, something he had wished for more times than he could count. As Dante and Lulu made the decision to fully commit to rebuilding their lives together, they understood that their love story was not about rewriting the past but about embracing the future. They had endured loss, heartache, and separation, yet through it all, they had found their way back to one another. Their reunion was not just about romance, it was about resilience, about choosing to believe in the possibility of happiness even after the deepest of sorrows. They were no longer the same people they had been when they first fell in love. They were stronger, wiser, and more aware of what truly mattered. Together, they would face the challenges of co-parenting, navigating their new reality, and ensuring that their love was built on a foundation that could withstand whatever obstacles life threw their way. There would be difficult days ahead, moments of doubt, and challenges they had yet to anticipate, but they had already overcome so much. If there was one thing they had learned through it all, it was that love, when true and unwavering, had the power to endure. Their reunion was not the end of their journey, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one that promised love, healing, and a future where they, along with Rocco, could finally experience the happiness they had long been denied. Third, Brooklyn felt as if the ground beneath her feet was crumbling the moment Sonny discovered the truth about Gio. Chaos erupted almost instantly. The argument between Sonny and Tracy escalated into a full-blown shouting match, their voices filled with anger and accusations, echoing through the room. The tension was suffocating, thick with unspoken fears and uncontainable emotions. Brooklyn stood frozen, her heart pounding as she watched the confrontation unfold, knowing that things were spiraling out of control. Sonny had always been a fierce protector of his family, but that also meant that if he perceived someone as a threat, he would not hesitate to act. Brooklyn could feel Sonny's fury radiating through the air, but what terrified her even more was the realization that the secret was now exposed. If Sonny knew, it was only a matter of time before others found out. The Corinthos family was constantly surrounded by danger, their enemies lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. If Joe's existence became public knowledge, it wouldn't just put Sonny in jeopardy, it would put the child in unimaginable danger. This wasn't just a matter of family drama, this was life or death. A wave of panic surged through Brooklyn, her thoughts racing uncontrollably. She had done everything in her power to keep this secret safe, to shield Gio from the unpredictable world of power struggles and betrayals. But now, she was losing control. She could already see the pieces falling into place, a chain reaction that could lead to devastating consequences. She wanted to plead with Sonny, to beg him to keep his emotions in check before things spiraled further. But deep down, she knew it was nearly impossible. Once Sonny knew the truth, there was no turning back. His protective instincts would take over, and once that happened, the situation would only escalate. Fourth, Sasha had spent the entire morning debating whether she should go through with it. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked into Carly's office, her heart pounding with anticipation of the conversation that was about to unfold. She knew there was no easy way to say it, no perfect moment to break the news, but she also knew she couldn't keep it a secret any longer. This was something Carly needed to hear directly from her, before it became public knowledge or, worse, before someone else told her first. As Sasha stood in front of Carly, she took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of courage she had. The words felt heavy, almost impossible to say, but she forced herself to speak them. The moment the truth left her lips, that she was pregnant with Michael's child, Carly's entire demeanor changed. Her face went pale, her expression shifting from surprise to disbelief, and then to something bordering on panic. For the first time in a long while, Carly Corinthos was at a loss for words. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thick with tension. Carly's mind raced, trying to process what she had just heard. Sasha, pregnant with Michael's baby? This wasn't just shocking, it was life-altering. Everything Carly had envisioned for her son's future suddenly felt uncertain. After everything Michael had been through, after all the turmoil with Willow, this was the last thing she had expected. And more importantly, how was Michael going to react to this bombshell? Sasha could see the wheels turning in Carly's mind, the way her gaze sharpened as if she was already calculating the consequences, the impact this would have on Michael, on Willow, and on their entire family. Carly had fought so hard to protect Michael's stability, to ensure he was on the right path, and now this revelation threatened to throw everything into chaos. Finally, Gio felt as if he were standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the unknown. The realization that he had found his family, that he had a mother out there who had been missing from his life for so long, left him reeling. His emotions were tangled in a storm of confusion, excitement, fear, and uncertainty. It was everything he had ever hoped for, and yet, at the same time, it felt overwhelming, like too much to process all at once. The weight of it all pressed down on his chest, making it hard to breathe, as if the world around him was shifting too fast for him to keep up. He had spent so much time searching, wondering, and hoping for answers. And now that he had them, he wasn't sure what to do next. He didn't know how to feel. Was he supposed to be happy? Relieved? Angry for the time lost? He felt all of it at once, and it left him unsteady, lost in a flood of emotions that he wasn't sure he could control. And then Emma was there. She appeared beside him at just the right moment, as if she had sensed that he needed her, even before he realized it himself. She didn't hesitate, didn't ask unnecessary questions or push him to talk before he was ready. Instead, she simply sat with him, offering her quiet presence as a source of comfort. Gio wanted to say something, to explain the chaos in his mind, but the words didn't come. He clenched his fists, frustration and vulnerability mixing together, but before the storm inside him could take over, Emma gently placed a hand on his arm. It was a small gesture, but it grounded him, reminded him that he wasn't alone in this. She had always been someone who could see through the walls he put up, someone who understood him without needing an explanation. And now, when he felt the most lost, she was there to anchor him, to remind him that he didn't have to go through this alone.